Good. All right, then, we're going to call to order and then go into executive session. Is that how we're going to do it? All right. Mr. Meisner? Oh, we do a roll call first? Would you call the roll, please?
Sorry, Mayor Troutman.
Here.
Council members Gonzalez.
Here.
Dorito.
Here.
Hamrick.
Here.
Jaquez.
Here.
Meisner.
Here.
Councilmember Smith is running a little late. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Meisner?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that City Council hold an executive session to hold a conference for the city, with the city attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B and to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024A. Second.
Any discussion of the motion? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorito.
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez. Aye. Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay. Oh, good evening. Hi. Welcome. Before every council meeting, we have 15 minutes if you'd like to come address the open mic. Now, what I would ask you, if you're going to talk about something that's on the agenda, let's wait till we get to it. But if you have something that you would just like to talk to council about, you got 3 minutes. And just come on up. Now, I do have a Catherine Connick. Is Catherine here? Would you approach and tell us what you like?
Hi, I'm Catherine Kunacek. I work with Family Crisis Services Incorporated here in Canyon City, and we are the only domestic violence and sexual assault crisis center serving Fremont and Custer counties. And I just wanted to come today to formally invite all of the council members to our annual Take Back the Night event. That is a march and a rally in support of survivors of sexual violence in our community. This will be the 12th annual, and Family Crisis Services has been operating in this county for 37 years. So we just wanted to extend an invitation to our elected representatives. I have a couple of stats just to share with you so that they're in the back of your mind when considering attending this event. Approximately 1 in 6 American women and 1 in 33 American men are survivors of rape or attempted rape within their lifetime, and that 63,000 children a year are found to be sexually abused by Department of Human Services, finding that there's credible evidence that sexual abuse occurred. So this is in no way a rare occurrence, and it's not in our community. So I would just like to invite you. You guys have formal invitations, and if there's any questions about the event, my contact information is in that letter. So thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Council? Okay. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and call to order the April 2nd, 2016 General Regular City Council meeting. And would you call the roll, please? Oh, no, let's go. Is Greg here? Greg, please rise and have Greg do the invocation.
Lord, we just lift up this great city to you tonight. We're so thankful for this city and all that's going on, and we see new things happening, and we got our events coming up this summer, so many of them. We just ask your blessings on those. Lord, I want to pray for the council members and the mayor and all the employees of the city as well. I pray that they have integrity, they continue to work hard for the citizens of this great city. Give them the strength and the wisdom and discernment they need to make great decisions for this city. And once again, we're just so thankful for your blessings. We thank you that you're smiling on us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Would you call roll, please?
Mayor Troutman.
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Here. Gonzalez.
Here.
Dorito.
Here.
Hamrick.
Here.
Jaquez.
Here.
And Meisner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do we have any citizens just on other issues to talk to council?
We have not received any written request to speak to council that's not on the item that's already on the agenda.
Okay. Then I will seek approval of the minutes for the March 19th, 2018 regular city council meeting and the March 21st, 2018 vision committee meeting. Are there any corrections? Wow. Okay. Could I have a motion from council?
Mayor and council, I move that we approve the minutes from the 3/19/2018 regular city council meeting and the 3/21 vision committee meeting.
Second?
Second, Ms. Gonzalez, thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Meisner,
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorito.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Are there any council announcements at this time? Anybody? Mr. Meisner?
You have a meeting Wednesday.
Me? General government meeting, here, 4 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll be talking about business dumpsters and Black Hills franchise agreement.
Is there a metaphor there? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Mr. Jaquez?
Yeah, Monday I attended a district CDOT meeting in Cripple Creek, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on. Most of it's going to be taking place in the county. The one thing that I thought was going to be the good one is there's a good possibility that they may get some money to take care of that bridge on Grandview. You know, it's been a problem forever. It's falling apart. So let's hope that goes through. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to wish all of Canyon City and everyone in the audience tonight, first of all, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. It's important to us to have you as a part of our local governments. Also want to wish you a late happy Easter. As far as announcements go, we also have for city council members our Carol and Morning Line this Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. If any of you can make it, I'd like to know if we can have you there. And next week, we have for Dawson Ranch and Stormwater, they're looking for collaborative projects. That's going to have a meeting on that on April 10th, if any city council members want to attend. And we are interviewing new city council members on the 12th, a special meeting.
What, that's 3:30?
Yep,
3:30. Where's that Dawson Ranch meeting going to be?
here at City Hall.
City Hall, okay.
I'm sorry, Ashley, when was it?
That is April 10th at 1 p.m. We've had a pretty positive relationship with the Dawson Ranch HOA and looking to joint solutions to solve some stormwater in the neighborhood.
Okay, anyone else? Then I go for the, the minister, adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Could you have the administrator review the consent agenda items, please?
Mayor and Council, consent item 5A would authorize temporary street closure for the annual Blossom Festival Parade on May 5th between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Main Street and the adjacent streets. In addition, Cell Avenue from 9th Street to the Trailhead and 10th Street from Mulberry Avenue to Cell Avenue on May 5th for the annual Blossom Festival Fun Run, which will be from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. 5B would appoint the council member Ashley Smith to be the city's liaison to the Canyon City Area Metropolitan Recreation Parks District. 5C would approve Councilmember Dolly Gonzalez as the city's liaison to the Homeless Coalition of Fremont County. 5D would authorize the administrator to execute a service agreement with Andrew Smith as the educational paleontologist liaison between the Bureau of Land Management and the city's museum at no cost to the city. This will be a cost incurred completely by the federal government. Bid 2 here are bid number 32-18. This would award 880 gallons of traffic paint for M&M Paint from Canyon City in an amount of $7,378.05. And bid number 33-18 would award Sole Source for the display screen and Teach Smart software to Hatch Early Learning in the amount of $8,280.25. Want to recognize a state grant of 50%, but also a local donation from Walter Shep of 50% of these funds. So we want to thank him and recognize him for that gracious contribution. And this would be for early learning and literacy programs.
Okay. And do you have a report, Tony? No? I'm going to make a change to the agenda because I think we have a lot of people here who want to talk about one particular item. I'm going to move 9 up to 7. So we will be starting that next. Do we have that?
So it'd be 6B?
Let's do it as 6B, and then we won't have to renumber all the rest of
Okay,
them.
make it 6B. We're going to make 9, instead of 9, it'll be 6B. That's design/build street improvement project for 2A. Okay? Do I need a motion for that?
And I have some questions. Is it appropriate to ask the questions now?
Well, you got the motion.
You can do it. She has questions on the consent agenda?
Okay, go ahead.
Tony,
Yes.
for the Blossom Festival and the carnival, right now on the carnival site, there's a lot of dirt there. Will that be moved for the carnival, or will it impede the ability of the carnival to operate?
I
I'm not sure
believe
Kathy's been involved with that. She'd probably give you a better answer.
That's a lot of dirt.
Tony Falgene's in the audience, and I believe that he is the staff person that's dealing with that, and the one that should be speaking on that behalf. Tony, Tony missed the meeting because they had scheduled a 2A meeting at the same time that I had scheduled that meeting, and Tony hasn't relayed back to me what the plan is for that, those mounds of dirt, but we talked about it at our meeting.
Tony Falgene, Street Superintendent. The pile of dirt will be moved farther down in the east corner of the lot. It will take up a little bit of the parking, but the carnival lot will be open.
And they understood that it would be taking a little bit of their parking and share that lot.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Also, Dolly, for the Homeless Coalition, it's on the 3rd Thursday of the month, not the 2nd Thursday, just for your records.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I just also wanted to ask, is there anyone from the library here with the grant? Okay. And just want to also publicly thank Walter Shep for all that he does for our community. I mean, donation to the library is just one of many things that he has done to benefit Canyon City as a whole, and we're really appreciative of Walt Shep and his generosity. And with that, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda and consent agenda with the amendment to move number 9 to 6B.
Okay. Second? Ms. Gonzalez, second. Thank you. Mr. Meisner. Discussion.
Just a simple question. I hate to ask this question, but is there any reason why that street closure permit is not on our standardized street closure permit form?
It is. On those forms, they have submitted them, but at the magnitude of this event, it's better to condense those things, and instead of killing more trees and giving you all the paperwork, we feel it better to just condense it so you can see it all in one sheet instead of all the others. But we do have it on file if you'd like to come and see it. And we do have their insurance and stuff, too.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez? Aye. Councilmember Dorito?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay. We're going to go to 6A, right? Or is it B? 6A? 6B. That will be Design, Build, Street Improvement Project 2A. Could we report from the city engineer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Inside your packets, I've included a number of memos. I've also included staff's recommendations as well as a breakdown of the points scoring for the RFP. As directed by City Council at the beginning of this year, we did put the 2A project back out to RFP for design build project. We received 2, one from Kiewit and one from ANS. And when we were completed with the scoring, Kiewit is the preferred proposer that staff is recommending. And further, we have also reduced the scope so that the project was within the budget. The original scope was based on the estimate that was given last year. And then we had a little bit of scope creep later on as we thought there was some potential for even better pricing this year. And so after we had the change on Main Street, we included an extra block of Main Street with wider streets, and then also included about a quarter mile of Forge Road with some water main work. So after getting the bids back, With the preferred bid being at prices that were even lower than last year's prices, it was obvious to us that the scope wasn't appropriate, so we further reduced the scope so that's within this budget. And then the only thing new that I have to report since I wrote the memos was the required escrow documents from ANS were not delivered today as required. So that makes that bid non-responsive. And other than that, if you have any other questions, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Any questions?
I want to start with at least a question in terms of should we continue with this? What I'm going to see is addendum B, I think, which took the monies from the 12th Street intersection, I think, and moved that down to do some work from 9th to 13th Street, or from 9th to 12th Street. It was my request to the city administrator, which I thought had support from council, that the monies, which I think was $120,000, that was available for the 12th Street intersection, that money would be, that we could take that money and reevaluate and possibly re-engineer the intersections on 4th, 5th, 6th Main Street and make those corners so that we could make those turns appropriately. It's now my understanding, which I will duly respect, that it's not in the interest of council to move that money from there to the downtown project, but to move that money to the 9th to 12th Street. And I would request, should that bid move forward, that we remove that addendum.
Just for clarification, I think we're talking two different projects. The amount of money you're talking about regarding the school safety intersection improvements at 12 have nothing to do with this 2A bid, but the monies can be reserved. As you know, we've chatted about looking at some different design options to modify the intersections downtown. The engineering staff's going to draft up some different models for you to take a look at, and we can have a discussion about that, but that particular set of improvements has nothing to do with this 2A bid.
Right, and that was part of the issue with the Safe Routes to School project, was the bulk of the improvements were grant funded. So we moved the so the money that was originally, before 2A happened, the money that was originally going to be used for the pavement portion of that, we were going to build with the 2A project this year. It's more efficient that way. By shifting it from the Safe Routes to School project, we had to go find just a pavement-only project from that point, because we don't have matching dollars to do the other work that's necessary to do the Main Street stuff you're talking about. So it would take a significant amount more money to do Main Street improvements like we've been doing in the 400, 500, 600 block, where the 9th to 12th Street is pavement-only replacement.
So just to make it clear, Councilman Meisner, your proposal still has life. We're doing the design, we'll bring them back to the council in the next couple of months. But this 2A proposal is not directly related to that.
And further reasoning behind that was we had already, because we had anticipated the Safe Routes to School project, we had already designed the segment of water main and budgeted for that in the 9th to 12th Street section. So it made sense to go there next, since that work was already done.
So the reference in my email that you said that council wasn't interested in moving those funds.
I thought you were referring to, unfortunately, I misunderstood you as to whether the 2A funds were to be moved to the downtown. So I think there was just some confusion, but these are two separate issues, and we're following up on both of them.
At some point, 2A money could be used for the pavement reconstruction downtown, but we'd have to come up with different funds to do the other improvements. And they go together. You can't do one without the other.
Mr. Hammer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to note I did receive the materials and I did read them about the bid evaluation, and I did receive the spreadsheet. And I would just like to note that on the original scope, that there was about $1 million of difference between the two bids, about 20%, depending on how you want to, 20% or 25%, depending what you want to use as the base number. But I would note that our technical evaluation criteria gave that $1 million difference between $5 million bid and $4 million bid 1 point out of 138 points. And that does not seem appropriate. It does not seem to recognize the, I want to say the value of money, but I think that it's, that the savings, if there's a savings, there should be a higher score for a substantial savings. In this case, it's a theoretical because the scope did change. But as we're moving forward on bids like this, I think it's appropriate that where there's a huge dollar difference there, 20 or 25%, that it deserves more than just 1 point out of 138 possible.
And that may be the case now. It wasn't the case last year when we brought these scores to council. In fact, staff had a different arrangement. We were giving, for example, more weight towards local contractors and that sort of stuff. And at council's direction, we actually rolled some of those items back. So we used the scoring scheme that was previously approved. But that doesn't mean it can't be changed, of course, in the future.
Adam, where did you guys derive your score sheet here that you guys have put together?
What's that?
Where was this derived from?
The score sheet was just derived from discussions with staff and city council.
Because by my math, if he would have done the job for free, that would have only accounted for a 4-point differential.
Well, it's
based on what Mr. Hamrick has pointed out.
Okay, hold it. All right, we don't need that outbreak right now, okay? Thank you.
And I don't mean that condescending, and I don't mean that facetiously. I'm just saying I'm in agreement with Mr. Hamrick that weight needs possibly to be evaluated.
And part of that's understanding how best value contracts work. So it's not all about cost.
It isn't about cost, but I mean, we do have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible.
Absolutely. Which is why you want to pick the best value, which isn't just about cost.
And for information, this RFP was reviewed by the council, was also reviewed by potential bidders. No one argued against the scoring mechanism that's here. Certainly we can change it for the future, but just to make that clear.
Any other comments from council? Mr. Meisner.
Well, we may have reviewed the RFP, but I surely didn't read this document, which I understand lays out the scoring mechanism. I understand where we're at with the situation with Kiewit, and I hope I say that correctly. At this particular point in time, I think we can all waste a lot of time and energy. I think the process is flawed. And I don't want that to be a negative reflection on our staff, but I think the process itself is flawed, and we have to address that in a bid of $4.5 to $5 million. I would recommend that we save some time and energy. We do not approve this bid. We take the $4.5 million from 2018, we roll that into 2019, and we have another $9,000 bid.
$9 million bid for budget projects. I do have a concern that a lot of the projects that we wanted to do in 2018 had to be scaled back due to not enough money in the water main funds and the change in the sidewalk project. It would be nice to see perhaps that if we waited, that we could compile maybe that $9 million pot so we can actually finish an entire street instead of just little bitty sections in 4 different parts of town. That appeals to me.
Council?
Go ahead.
Well, in what we reviewed with staff and the review process, there was some questions that came up that I would like to clarify. The question of plagiarism came up. And I guess I just would like to know legally, on a legal matter, this was a document that had been released to our entity. Does that typically make it plagiarism?
It is absolutely plagiarism. The question is whether council believes that is problematic. Staff's recommendation is that because it was plagiarized, it impacts the responsiveness and the responsibility of the bid because it's not their work. So that's staff's recommendation, is that the plagiarism is a negative, negative factor because it's not their work. And so that is the recommendation. And there is certainly a legal basis for finding that plagiarism can be a negative in terms of responsibility and responsiveness. And so that's why the staff recommendation is that the plagiarism is a negative factor.
Okay.
Adam, if we do what Mr. Meisner is saying, what kind of an impact will it have negatively, positively, to moving that to 2019?
Well, I think there's a number of risks, and I listed some of those in my memo. These were the only two proposers last year. These are the only two proposers this year. We're likely to get the only same proposers next year. This type of activity, when you throw a bid out like this based on something that there was, again, like Tony said, there was no protest on the process. It puts a really bad name out there for the city, for bidders, because they see that when they put their numbers out there and their information, and they put a lot of money into putting these proposals together, they go through all that work and trouble, and then we don't award the job. That again puts at risk whether we get any proposals next year or we only get one proposal. So it makes it harder to evaluate that next year. The other thing is these bidders have already put their prices out, and so again they've exposed themselves, so to speak, to other bidders. And as you've seen, as we discussed about the plagiarism, as far as their work and as well as that, all becomes public documentation. Delaying it, I don't think is really fair to the public, since we've told them that we're going to build roads every year. This is something we know is very, very sensitive to the community. And so another year to pass without us fixing anything, I guess there could be some potential cons to that. Delay is definitely going to increase price. So the margin that we're talking about this year could be ate up next year in going through the process again, just in cost increase. Again, you would be penalizing one of the proposers who we think did things correctly, and that's unfair as well. We would be penalizing utilities that have already went through and adjusted their schedules to do work. An example of that's on Park Avenue. We've promised the utilities when we are going to redo a road and give them notice that they can go in and do that work, and that they don't have to patch back or maintain those cuts because the pavement is coming. And so there'd be a situation there where we have a cut that's now open, gravel cut that will be open for longer than a year, possibly, because of that, or someone has to expend the money to go ahead and patch the trench. So those are the cons. I guess the only positive I could think of is maybe what Councilwoman Smith mentioned, is that you do a little more at once, which is what our intention was last year, but I don't think that that's worth it. Another thing, we have an unfinished project on Field Avenue that we'd intended to get done while school's out this year. That would be one more year that project's unfinished again. So that's my take on waiting.
Thank you.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Is it feasible, Adam, or whoever can answer this question, is it feasible to take these two bids, send them to a different entity to have them evaluated?
Well, one, I'm not sure why you would do that now at this point in time. We now have, because of what we learned today with the escrow documentation, which is the backup data for their pricing. We didn't receive that from ANS today. So it's a non-responsive bid at this point in time. So now we couldn't even negotiate with that proposer now, because the risk of them being able to change their numbers now is not fair to the public or the other bidder. So essentially, we received a partial bid, which is why the price at this point is moot. It doesn't matter, because they didn't provide the backup information for it.
But in regards
So they could have
to
put any number down that they wanted to in order to, possibly win the bid.
where it may not be appropriate, given this year's bid, we would certainly be open to that in the
Okay,
future.
that was my next question.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate if council made that decision. But to counter a couple of the claims, I think we talk about an increase in price. We also need to factor in the variable that we're almost doubling the bid amount, so that could potentially offset any increases in prices. I'm not aware that in the 2A original ballot that we guaranteed that we would in fact do street work each and every year. We had some basic discussions about the fact of doubling some years potentially, or at least getting those numbers, those dollars higher, to see if we couldn't get a larger bid, which would result in a lower price. So some of those claims, I think, can be offset. My concern with the process is that for those of you that know me, I would like to see a matrix that has specific identifiers in it, so that when I'm evaluating a bid, I can take from the bid and match with my identifiers and then grade that particular bid. And it's my interpretation that the identifiers that we have are subjective, and that when I look through these pages in terms of the points and how they're going to be evaluated, I get a little confused. I don't know this document as well as Adam does by any means, but I get a little concerned in terms of how do we evaluate a bender for 10 points when, as an example for innovative pavement solutions, and I'm just picking that, is the approach and commitments to maximize the scope of work is 4 points. Approach and commitments to minimize disruption is 2 points. Approach and commitments to minimize impacts to the streets is 2 points. And approach and commitments to minimize impact to environment are 2 points. I'm not an engineer, but I've evaluated lots of different proposals, and it would be difficult for me, I think, to evaluate proposals based upon that language without some specific identifiers that I could then assign points to. And again, that's from my perspective. I would like to see a much more defined process for evaluating each one of those bids. We know that those bids are going to be very, very competitive. We know that those bids are going to be very, very complex. We also mentioned the fact that should we not move forward, the current pricing in this bid would become a public document, and that information could be used in the future. If we award this bid, the prices in this document will become a public document and will be used for next year's pricing. So I think some of those things kind of outweigh each other. And we can probably stay here until 10 o'clock and still not come to a strong consensus in terms of what's the best thing to do. I do say that we can push this whole thing off, start over again next year, and try to get it right.
Okay.
Councilman Meisner, I'm going to speak semi-candidly, and I'm new to this, so it may be incorrectly. But I reviewed the bid, I reviewed the way we handled the situation, and I say we because much like any entity, we're the figurehead, we're the top of the echelon, which means innately we bear the responsibility for all of those that work below us. And when we've mishandled the situation and you've got a response as we do here with this 0 seats, empty room, I believe this is the people telling us we need to reevaluate what we're doing. We need to evaluate the matrix.
Come on, hold it.
I appreciate that.
Let him talk.
We need to evaluate the matrix. We need to evaluate the process, and I'm in support of either Councilman Gonzalez's proposal of sending it off to a third-party person to be evaluated, or we push it off to next year and let's get a better matrix that is a little bit more palatable of how we gauge this process. But I'm not in support of pushing forward in a project that I don't feel strongly about.
Well, I would like to maybe combine all those, besides pushing it off, so we can do larger segments of streets at one time and collect a little bit more money in cash to have more competitive bids, and have that matrix. But when we pushed for the 2A originally, we stated that this was going to be very independent. We were going to let private business do what they do best, and that is to create product. And perhaps that we would need to have the bidding process and oversight of the streets be done privately as well, as mentioned before.
Well, I just have one other question. When did we move to the design build?
Right after 2A was passed.
Okay, so it was developed just
We've
for
never
2A.
really done streets before. So
Okay.
I mean, part of our tenure here as city council is that we're learning
Right.
and progressing, and this is part of our growing pains, I guess,
Okay.
is learning the process.
So I haven't had a chance to look through the, what is it called when they send it?
The RFP?
Yes, yes. Is there a way to simplify that process just a little bit more so that it's not so complex, not so confusing, a little bit easier for our local contractors to be able to compete with larger corporations? I don't know if that's even.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead.
Let me jump in here a little bit. I think there's a couple of different things going on here. One, with our design build RFP, essentially what we're asking for as a city and as an engineering staff is a narrative. We're not asking for concrete designs. We're not asking for engineered drawings of streets at this point. That's one of the products of the contract. And to kind of build on what you said, Councilwoman Gonzalez, is the idea that the RFP, as I read it, and I did come into the city offices today to read the RFP, the bids, once the bidding is closed or the contract award is awarded, the information belongs to the city. And so we have the 2017 designs that were prepared by Keywood. And so my question is there a way that we can take those designs and make them applicable to the coming work that we want to do so that we do not, again, have to do the design build, but have our engineering department issue the designs and then have bidders bid on those designs. And so that would, what I envision that would entail is construction drawings, essentially drawings of what the design is that the bidders could then say, could work their magic with their numbers. So that's one point. The second point is in terms of the bidders and their work that they've done this year, if we're going to be doing these streets, I mean, these are the streets we've got to do, the work is not in vain. That work is still out there and still can be used, can be reused. And there is some risk that bidders are now looking over each other's shoulders at what was done. But it's not like a waste, and it is would be a necessary step for the $9 million project.
Anyone else?
I want to add something.
Quickly, I want to get to the people over here.
Okay.
I think Frank had some.
And then Frank, then we're going to go ahead and go to the audience. Go ahead, Mr. Meisner.
I'm done.
You done?
Well,
Go ahead.
temporarily. I just want to say this. It's my understanding that the verbiage that's submitted relative to the technical standards is very, very critical to the grading system. I consider myself to be a reasonably ethical guy, but I would do everything I could in a bid of this magnitude to make for sure that my verbiage is as similar to the verbiage that I know the city favorably likes. Now, is that plagiarism? I don't know. That's not for my place as a council person to determine, and I don't believe that's a place for the city staff to determine. I believe that's between the two parties that are involved. But the point is, the verbiage that's submitted with the bid is extremely critical in terms of how you state what you're going to do. And I would think it would be very difficult to look at those two bids and say one is above the other than the interpretation, which I believe is inappropriate, for us to say you could do the work and you cannot do the work. And a comment.
Are we going to go to the audience?
Go ahead, you want to go ahead?
No, if we're going to the audience, I'll keep
Yes.
mine till the end.
Okay. Okay, then by order of the way they were handed, anybody else? Good. I'm not going to allow any more. Okay. This is the way the order was handed to Kathy. Josh Airy, would you step forward? And your name again and address, and we'll start the timer.
Josh, you won't have to sign in because I've got a slip.
Great. So, my name is Josh Airy, 731 Tyrolean Way, Canyon City. I'm third-generation business owner of A&S Construction. Thank you to council, mayor, staff for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Has council, well, first I'd like to address the non-responsive bid claim stating that we did not submit the escrow docs. We did, in fact, submit a protest today, which puts everything on hold, including the protest docs. So we'll let the legal team decide on that. But there is a protest in process right now. Has council seen the protest?
I have not, no.
I brought a copy that I'd like to hand out to each council member.
Well, does council want to see that protest doc?
Has the city received it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have an email from
an hour and a
from the
half
city.
after the escrow agreement was due.
An hour.
You want me to?
Just for the facts.
Okay.
Please.
We'll give him more.
These are the protests right here. These are right here, so you go like this.
I assume it's okay if we get the copy of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Somebody
Okay.
has something, I'll take the copy.
We'll take a copy.
I received the
I'd like to
email
see
an
a
hour
copy.
and a half after I turned in the protest. However, I was around today to turn in the protest.
Okay.
So if an hour and a half is what we're discussing
Okay.
here, then.
And just so council's clear and so the record is clear, the deadline for submitting the escrow agreement was 11 a.m. It is my understanding that the protest was received sometime after noon today. That's what staff was indicating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was that the timestamp at the front desk?
Yeah, they got a receipt.
I got an email. They were unable to give me a timestamp right away.
Okay. Go ahead, Josh.
Sure. So, in the interest to save everybody here, you know, the long time for us to go through our protest, I'd like to just request a 10 to 15 minute break to allow council to read through it. I understand if this is not possible, but that's what I'd like to request.
To redo what?
Review the protest that I
Oh,
just
review
handed
it. I thought you said redo it. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk to the rest of the people that would like to, because that's why they're here, and then we'll consider that.
Well, if we're not going to read the protest right now, I'd just like to cover a few bullet points.
Okay?
In 2018, A&S's proposal was $985,828.60 less than Kiewit's proposal. A&S has their headquarters located in McKinsey Avenue in Canyon City. Kiewit's office on file at the city engineer's office is Denver. The RFP for the first phase is nearly identical to the 2018 RFP for the second phase. In fact, much of the RFP generated by the city reflects exact language utilized by CDOT. A&S did submit a CORA request in 2017 for Kiewit's proposal for a reference since it received perfect scores. The city engineer, Adam Lancaster, expressly stated to me in an email, FYI, nothing in Kiewit's proposal is confidential. Kiewit could request certain information be excluded that Kiewit believed was proprietary information, trade secrets, or confidential information. So it would be illogical for A&S to attempt to reinvent the wheel by proposing anything but what Kiewit did in the first phase as it relates to the technical proposal. The defamatory statements made about A&S that we cheated or acted fraudulently are vehemently denied by ANS. Some examples of these comments. ANS may not have the understanding of and capabilities regarding the work. Calls into question as whether they understood the scope of work, and it did not appear they included all the work. Almost the entire technical proposal is plagiarized. Again, we vehemently disagree with these statements. The proposal are missing significant amounts of work scope, bringing into question the proposer's understanding of the scope or inclusion of all the work in their price. The qualifications lack the required detail to ascertain the proposer's abilities, yet we received a pass on qualifications. So I've also included for you a copy of our Form D. It could be cord released for public record, along with Adam's technical, the spreadsheet of the score sheet. I've highlighted in orange the misrepresentations. They changed our numbers on the score sheet from what we'd submitted, both on Waterline and Centennial Park. I can't put an explanation as to why they did that. So Adam does have a binder of the remaining supporting exhibits to go along with that 18-page protest. The council members, I would suggest that you request copies of that. If you're unable to get those requests, please come find me, and I will get you the remaining supporting exhibits. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. The next is John Paul Airy. John Paul.
My name is John Paul Airy, 2985 Sierra Court, Canyon City, owner of ANS Construction. Thank you, City Council, Mayor, staff, for your time this evening and obviously the opportunity to speak. My family has been in business for Canyon City for over 50 years. My mom and dad cut their first payroll check on the kitchen table of a little 2-bedroom house at 180 Cottonwood, which, if you're not familiar with this, is southeast of Maine near Ortegas. Although we're no longer cutting checks at the kitchen table, for over the last 50 years, we've continued to cut payroll checks. Last year, in Canyon City, we cut payroll checks for over $7.8 million in Canyon City. So we've been here a long time. We're very proud of the reputation we've built, being honest and having integrity in everything we do. Never in the history of our company have we been publicly accused of being dishonest. Despite what Adam Lancaster, Tony O'Rourke have said, this company has done absolutely nothing illegal. They have accused us of, quote, the proposers of being a gross misrepresentation of our integrity and qualifications. Lancaster continues to call us cheaters and frauds. Let's understand clearly what this is they're saying. We're accused of plagiarizing an approved proposal that the city, the very city that's accusing us, scored perfect. This was a public document. You have a copy of the email from Adam Lancaster to us telling us that it is a public document. It's one of the handouts we sent out. This document was sent to us, was scored and sent to us by the City of Canyon City. Under the same rules and however they're explaining the plagiarism argument, this is the document, Colorado Department of Transportation Design Build document. If you were to interpret Mr. O'Rourke and Mr. Lancaster's accusation of plagiarism of ANS Construction, the city plagiarized the bulk of their RFP from this document. That's what we're talking about. I would ask, why is ANS Construction wrong and the city correct in what they're doing? Do they have a statute that they can cite and claim that we have violated? If so, provide it. Show me. Get it out here. if you connect the dots, it's clearly obvious that they're throwing the bid towards Kiewit. They are asking the taxpayers to write a check for an additional $1 million of taxpayers' money for the exact same job. They're going to dilute it with their interpretation of our numbers, however they did that, and the change of the scope, however they done that. But the reality is the RFP that we submitted and the RFP that Kiewit submitted, we are $985,000 less for the exact same work. That's why we're here tonight. Why a select few of city staff are asking the taxpayers to spend that much additional more money of their tax money. That's why we're here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Is it Reeves? Chuck? Reeves?
He's selected not to speak. We'll document that, Josh.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Will Witz? Will? Aurora. Thanks for coming, Will. Would you state your name and address, please?
Will White, 6586 South Sedalia Court, Aurora, Colorado. Again, I'm here with Kiewit, representing Kiewit. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Kiewit Infrastructure out of Denver, Colorado. I want to thank the council and the audience for your time. I certainly respect what the Aries have had to say and have the utmost respect for their company as well. It's not for me to decide what was done legally or illegally. I don't have any idea. What I do know is we followed the rules for the RFP. And all we ask is that you uphold that RFP. It's the document you put out as a city for a fair bid process. And in our mind, that fair bid process was followed. However you interpret it within that is up to you. We have no bearing on that. So that's all we would ask as Kiewit. That's all we have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Will. Myron F. Smith, is that like Smitty? You state your name and whether you live in town?
I'm Myron F. Smith. I'm from 3003 South Street in Canyon City. I just want to say I've worked with Aries since way back in the 90s when I was county commissioner, and they always treated the county right. We worked with them. They've done a good job. They work all over the country, and I think they do a good job. I just don't understand if an established company that is bonded, insured, and comes in almost $1 million under the next bid, why would you want to reward to someone and spend the extra taxpayers' dollars to do it? It's the same job. If they can't perform, don't work according to contract requirement, then make them redo the job or don't pay them for the services. Hiring a local firm to me is so important to our area. The local businesses pay property tax, sales tax, all the other taxes and fees that are applied to being in business, and the wages that are returned to the businesses in our area. Each employee pays property tax, sales tax, the new street improvement tax, stormwater fees, fire district mill levy, rec district mill levy, sewer tax, utility bills, and so on and on. The employees also support our local businesses, schools, churches, and the money continues to stay in our community. They buy vehicles, appliances, clothing, food, sporting goods, school supplies, gas, oil, etc. Why would any of the town employees or the out-of-town employees buy gas here when in Colorado Springs the gas is always 10 to 30 cents a gallon cheaper than it is here? Most of them probably bring their lunch, so they really don't pay a lot of local property tax here. Plus,
The bid is $1 million cheaper. Use that money to pave more streets. Remember the taxpayers. You may need to vote, ask them again for some more taxes in the future. The accusations that the technical proposal was plagiarized from the 2017 Kiewit proposal, I assure you that every contract or form that's presented in today's world has been borrowed from someone before. They're just almost all legal forms are copied from someone else's work and getting the right verbiage. I wish I had $1 for every time someone plagiarized the forms and artwork we generated over the 65 years I've been in the printing business. Thank you, and remember, the local taxpayers you represent, you can save them $1 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Smitty.
Thank you, Smitty.
Anyone else? Could you write your name on that tablet then and give us your name and address, please?
Lost my pen. My name's Richard Ranson, Rick Ranson. I was an attorney for 45 years, had the good fortune to retire. I'm now a contract consultant, and I consult with ANS. And I'm going to take real issue with your counsel over here that this is plagiarism, because there is no statute, nor is there a case that you can cite that claims that contract documentation preparation is plagiarized. It doesn't exist. If it was a trade secret, if it was proprietary, you would have an argument. But none of the documentation we're talking about is any of those things. Cutting and pasting contract documents, as Mr. Smith just said, is how the business is practiced. There's nothing in the RFP that says you can't take documentation from somewhere else. It does not exist. 6.4 is the section number. It tells you what the illegal acts are. And plagiarism isn't covered. It's not a crime. It's not something you can sue on. If we were writing term papers, you might have an argument. But we're talking about real money here, $1 million. So this idea of plagiarism as a reason to disqualify a contract is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. It's irresponsible, Mr. O'Rourke, absolutely irresponsible. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
I need to write my name down.
Could you sign up there? I think it's Mr. Lippis, is that right?
Was yesterday.
Well, we're going to let you keep it.
You want my address too?
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Right.
On a lighter note, we talked about Walt Shep tonight, and nobody clapped. Do you realize what this man has done in this community? I want to hear a clap. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Aries. I don't do business with them. I'm a contractor, probably the next longest contractor in this city, 45 years. It's impossible to deal with the city. I'm going to be very honest. Not on their behalf. What happens to everybody here? We pay taxes. We send our children to school here. We support local businesses. For what? To see what happened here tonight? If we cannot get our staff to take care of business, then they need to be out. We need to get somebody that can. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And if it continues like this, it will get worse. The people here are showing you they're done fed up with it. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Timothy Gaffney. I live at 1638 Locust Street up in Lincoln Park. I'm also a property owner here in Canyon City. And and I've known the Aries for over 40 years. They're like families. But I will tell you right to the point. You have two bids from qualified contractors that have paved millions of miles or hundreds of thousands of roads and put down tons of asphalt. Not only in Colorado, they're approved by CDOT, both Kiewit and A&S Construction. They are also approved by the U.S. Department of Transportation to do federal jobs, both outfits. We have two bids. One bid is $1 million less. I do not understand why we are all here and we're here. I mean, me and my profession, my wife and I have a few rental properties. When I go out, I call a qualified contractor to walk in and say, I need help with a heater, or I can't put in a water heater in my property. Please come in. I get two bids. I pick the lowest one from two qualified people. I don't care what the scoring system has to do with it. You have a local company that rents from some of their employees, from me, from other people in this that have rental properties, that spend dollars here, that do that. They are $1 million less. I know John Paul. I've known his parents are like second parents to me. They would not bid this process if they could not bring it to completion under the contract bid that they are given in those documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Tim.
Rhonda Sherrado, 94 Eagle Drive South, Canyon City. I want to give just a little bit of a different perspective to the past Kiewit performance last year. I saw a document when I came to one of our city council meetings that had the return back to our city in the form of dollars spent. And one of those categories was lodging and for lack of a better term, spending money back at our restaurants, or giving back to the city. And I'm sure that the administrator can give us that number. But we own Prospectors RV Resort up on the hill. And I will tell you that we housed between 15 and 25 of those Kiewit employees that were working the roads up on the hill. And I will tell you, point blank, we had several people that never paid their rent. We had conversations with Kiewit and the organization as to how those dollars were being spent back in our lodging and our hotels for their out-of-town employees who were coming to our city to perform these services, flaggers, road workers, you name it. They were fantastic people, but they didn't pay their bill. So my question is back to Kiewit, and why in last year's bid that they return these numbers, that they did all this work for our city and returned these numbers back into our town and our community, when I know for a fact that it's not true. I'd like to see the substantiation of those dollars spent back into our town, where I can turn to the Aries, and if they didn't pay their bill because they had someone up at my park, I have John Paul's cell phone. And I can call him, and he would get them to pay that bill. The point is not only should we support our local community and a company that has an upstanding reputation with everyone in this town, but let's take a look back at what Kiewit did last year, and let's confirm that they really did what they said they were going to do, because they didn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Allison Helsley, 94 Eagle Drive South. I just wanted to kind of bring a little point to the matrix conversation. I'm like you, Jim. I like matrices. If it's unclear to the council, to the administration staff of how to weight it, it's going to be unclear to the contractors who are putting in the bid. And it seems to me that it would be really difficult to evaluate apples to oranges. It seems to me that to eliminate that and have an apples to apples comparison, it would be smart for a contractor to ask for a public document from a company that received 100% rating and basically say, okay, what is it that they're looking for, so that I can take the guesswork out and make the bid. Plagiarism, I don't even understand how this has gotten to where it's at, but this is, to me, clear cut. I would do that same thing as a business person, putting in a bid for the RFP. take the guesswork out, make it clear, and put in the bid. And as he did, it was $1 million lower once you took the guesswork out of what the city was asking for. So, sorry, I got a little nervous there, but I hope that that makes sense. If it's not clear to the council for how to evaluate it, it's not going to be clear for the contractors. It's going to be really hard to choose who and what to go with. Makes sense to choose the 100% rating and get apples to apples in your bids.
Thank
Got
you,
it.
Allison.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name's Steve Lindner, representing Lindner Chevrolet, and I just want to make a comment. A couple of months ago, I lost a bid to the state bid by a couple $1,000s, and the unit was purchased out of town. But I lost that because I was high bid compared to the other company. In this particular case, when A&S Construction is $1 million less, to me, it should be awarded to them, because I was told that we've got to get the public the best bang for the buck. And that's why I lost the bid on a truck over $2,000. We're talking $1 million here. And they are low bid. If it's apples for apples, I think it's a no-brainer. That's in my own opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Next.
Hi, my name is Nick Phillips, 723 Tyrolean. I'm an employee of A&S Construction, but I recently moved down here from Denver. I spent about 7 years in the surety bond business as an underwriter. I just wanted to agree with council that I think this procurement method for a project of this size and scope is probably not the best choice. Typically in the bond business, we saw design build RFPs go out to projects in the hundreds of millions in size and scope. Agencies like CDOT using those with teams of qualified professionals reviewing them. And I'm not trying to discredit our city staff here, but we're talking teams of people reviewing these in order to evaluate projects like interchanges and the expansion of C470. I think we need to reevaluate how we're procuring contracts in the city to give our qualified local contractors a chance, and not just A&S, but all of the local contractors here in town. Give us a chance. I appreciate the time.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Did you put your name down there?
Thank you.
Next. Anyone else?
Hi, Beth Ketchmar, 509 Main Street. And I would just like to say that when this was brought to my attention today, I called my sister. My sister just works for the CDOT. She has worked for CDOT. She just retired from CDOT. And her job was to do financial analysis and material analysis to put up our RFPs for road projects throughout in the Denver metro area. And so I asked her about some of the questions about that had come up today with the Aries and the Aries bid. And one of the things she said is that CDOT doesn't look at, as far as their ethics, what they're looking for is not copying of contracts and things like that. Their ethics is looking at things like two companies that might go in to collude in bids and ask so that they can not compete, and the one who gets the highest bid would then give kickbacks to the other one, or companies using information that was not public knowledge on their bids. That was not allowed. She asserted that the contract language is contract language, and you would be expected to use that language. She also said, one of the main things she said is, CDOT only awards the lowest bidder. That is their decision factor. And she was actually very appalled at what was going on here, and that, she said that would never happen at CDOT. And I just would like to say that not only has the Aries Construction and a lot of the other businesses that are represented today, we all raise our family here, and I know that John Paul's family has actually come back to live in this community, come back from their college experience to raise their families here, and I think that's a huge testament to the changes that we've made to our community to make it a more modern, growing community with a lot of recreational opportunities. We want the people to come back here and raise their families. We passed the bond issue to show we care about the community. We passed the road issue to we care about the community. I think we should support the local community. It is of the utmost importance, and I thank everybody for coming here. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
How are you doing? Zach Langston, Langston Concrete, 902 South Union Street, Florence, Colorado. So, one thing I noticed in the conversation today is it kind of sounds like there's a big discrepancy or maybe a lot of unknown on what a proposal is and what a bid is. And we're all even actually throwing the term around loose in here. So I think I can offer a solution. I had a nice little letter prepared and typed. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Sorry, we're here at Langston Concrete. We have 39 employees currently on staff, 19 of which live in Canyon City and the surrounding region, along with their 12 spouses, 23 children, and 15 grandchildren. This year is our 27th year in business. On average, our revenue per year is between 7 and 10 million. We average between 3 and 5 million in payroll each year, half of which stays in the Canyon City vicinity each year. We pay our SMM fees, our taxes, sales tax, property tax, all may not be in Canyon City, but we've been in and around the area since we've been in business. Conventional bid method. Design build is probably a little too heavy for what we got going on here, in our opinion. Get a set of plans, derive a project to problem, which we have, design it, engineer it, bid it, award it, do it, close it. It's not real complicated. We believe the request for proposal is too involved for what's going on in here. And listening, it sounds like the majority of you don't really know what one of those are, or the matrix and the idea of how to grade them and what to do with them and how to evaluate them fairly doesn't seem to exist. Where if you can get a set of plans, kick it out to bid and answer the questions back and forth in between and award the bid and get the work done and go along, move about your day. Low bid generally always wins in those situations. You do still have the opportunity, if you want to get involved at some point in time in there, to evaluate those and see what's going on with them. We would strongly recommend just going back to the standard conventional bid method. In that respect, I think there's been some argument and some comment that the city maybe can't take on much more workload. I would argue that they don't necessarily have to. A portion of the money that was for the RFP was for design. Both teams have design on their team members, whatever you want to say. So that can be farmed out from the city. You can write a contract with an engineering design team, whatever you want. They have contracts all day long. I mean, there's people signed up with cities across the nation that can provide you those documents. So a portion of the 2A tax can still be used for that. Put a set of plans out in front of all these contractors in here. I guarantee you will get every single one of these guys in this room looking at this work. Maybe not on the magnitude that is there with the 9 million, if that's what ends up happening, or 4 million or whatever. So in recommendation for that, I would say maybe if we can offer it, is to potentially rethink outside the box, maybe split these streets up, do 2 streets at a time, a block at a time, a couple blocks at a time, a region, a zone, get it to where a specialized contractor can work in their field. Get the concrete guys to bid on the concrete work. Get the asphalt guys to bid on the asphalt work. The waterline guys on the waterline work. The RFP, and in general, kind of monopolizes the idea of the bidding process. So a lot of people in this room didn't come and give you guys a bid because it's just too big. They can't do that magnitude of work. So a lot of guys in here are good at installing water lines. So we've got some of the greatest in the area. Same with concrete guys. I mean, I like to think we kind of kick tail. You know, we finished downtown, I don't know, 27 days ahead of schedule, if I remember right. mean, that's our bread and butter.
Okay.
Water line, the whole 9 yards. So potentially just throw the idea out there, split it up,
Okay.
break it down, and go back to the conventional bid
All right.
process.
Thanks, Al. Thanks.
Good evening. My name's Will Colin, 1340 College Avenue here in Canyon City. Last month, I was here talking about the stormwater and thought I came up with a pretty good idea as far as how to make that money. We were talking about $600,000 to $800,000, I believe, at the time. Today, we're talking about $1 million. Last month, I understand, I respect where you guys were and the decision you made. Even though I didn't like it, I respect it and understand it. Tonight, you guys are faced with another decision, and it's a lot more money. And I think it's obvious compared to what we've been hearing here tonight. So I do appreciate the fact that you guys are listening to us and giving us the opportunity to speak. The thing that I think concerns me is that I believe in history and looking back at history. City council changes for the most part. You come and go, which is good. That's healthy. But I remember a time here, maybe 8-10 years ago, where Canyon City was thought to be not business friendly. And city council was taking a beating, staff was taking a beating. It wasn't pretty here. The pendulum has swung to the other side of the spectrum where Canyon City is more business friendly. And I just hope you guys realize that it appears to a lot of people in this town that the pendulum is swinging back over to the other direction. I hear what's happened here tonight. It's not friendly towards one of our longtime businesses, A&S, and I think back to something that happened here in the last winter with Dawson Ranch, where a perfectly great business was basically run out of town. From my understanding, they are leaving. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I hear. I just want you guys to kind of look at the big picture and hope that we don't get that bad reputation back. We've worked so hard, not just as city council and staff, but as citizens to erase that. And I shake my head thinking that here we go, we're going back the other direction. I hope that you guys see that and do something to change it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Hello there, I'm Ty Shepard, 455 Mackenzie Avenue. I'm a real estate developer and investor. My family, we moved here in 1983. We have, as a family, have done business with the Aries for a good bit of those years since we've been here. And, you know, I can say that they've always been on time and on budget. And, you know, I hate to see everybody sit here and sling mud and go back and forth. But the real truth is, I don't want to regurgitate and insult anybody's intelligence and talk about the $1 million, but that's the real deal here. It's the $1 million that we're short on a water line that Ms. Smith said on something else that we could be spending that on. But, you know, one concern I have is how come the Aries didn't come in last year when they lost and protest? You know, they lost fair and square as far as the way I see it in a bid process. They lose. We move on, we go to the next project and bid. And then the big concern is, how come we're throwing this local contractor under the bus? You know, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, plagiarism, all this stuff that's thrown around, but it just seems, obvious that the city needs to reconsider and, you know, spend their money wisely, especially the taxpayers' money. I appreciate what Mr. Colin just said, and that it has been difficult in times. And honestly, I think it's been difficult to do business here the last 20 years. I've had difficulties in numerous things. I'm not going to cry about it or anything like that, but whether it's subdividing or putting in a water line or building a building or even starting a youth center, we've had opposition. And we have got to swing that the other way and get more business friendly, as Will stated. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go a little bit longer, then we're gonna cut it short. Off. Short? Anyone else? Oh, wait, that's, yes, sir.
Last one. My name's Larry Shigeri. I live at 914 College Avenue. I'll write it down.
Okay,
I
thank
promise.
you. Thank you.
I would just like to voice my support for the low bid, which has come in somewhere around $900,000 under, $1 million under what you've been presented. In consideration, I believe we all know that A&S Construction is a very qualified company and has years of history and has done many of these projects throughout the state and other states in western United States. I do understand your bid process, and there are rules to the bid process. I don't believe the plagiarism claim has any merit at this time. I haven't seen it, but I do believe that A&S Construction did lose a bid with the city in a previous year, and they want your business. And the only way they can get your business is to figure out how to bid a project like you want. And so they looked at the winning bid and took the appropriate language out of that bid so that they can compare apples to apples and become the winning bidder. And so I just want to voice my support for a contract that is $1 million below what has been submitted for your consideration. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Anyone else? Jim?
My name is Jim Hoare. I live at 1549 Colorado. Also have the privilege of being the director of the Recreation and Park District. And I've had the fine pleasure of doing business with a lot of these local contractors in this room. And one of the finest is A&S Construction. They were one of the original contractors that helped develop parts of Pathfinder Park. Not only did they do excellent work, but they took pride in what they did because they live here. And I think that's something that might be being overlooked a little bit. You have an excellent opportunity to look at the lowest bidder and save the community $985,000, which is larger than our entire annual budget from property taxes. They pay local property taxes, both business and residential-wise. We need those taxes to keep doing what we're doing. If we don't have these companies in our community, we don't exist as a local agency. We don't have the privilege of sales tax. But the council has an opportunity to think about awarding this bid to A&S Construction, directing your staff, whether it be legal, administrative, or engineering, to go back, work with the numbers you've been given, and come back and offer a contract to them. They live here. They're going to make sure they do a good job. They have for us many times over. And $985,000 is a lot of money. This is a great opportunity to get a lot of work done. Then you would have the opportunity to compare the two finished products, the 2017 product and the 2018 product. Then you can look at it in 2019. Mr. Meisner, I would discourage you from making this package a lot bigger, because what that in essence does is put a lot of these local contractors out of the opportunity to be involved in this bid. And again, they do great work. They live here. They're going to have a lot of pride in what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, one or two more and then we're done.
Hello, my name's Ken Hirsch. I'm the owner of Avalanche Excavating and also have some local properties in the city limits that I pay taxes on. I would just like to emphasize that we're losing track of what the 2A was passed for, and that was to improve our streets and to help the local economy here. And I've been in business and done, last 18 years, I've done about 90% of the projects for Canyon City under the direction of Adam Lancaster. And all the projects went fine, done ahead of time, no hits, no nothing. So I would just like to see that maybe we split up the jobs down to a manageable size for the local contractors like myself and some of the others around that aren't big enough to do a design build. And that's pretty much it, is just keep track of, you know, how our local citizens are putting the money back into the city. And even in your own conference room, you have a model on the wall that's how the city's gonna grow. And in the center of that model, you say to keep all the local money local. And I see us drifting away from that right now. So, and I thank you for everything.
All right, thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Well, okay. Let's go ahead. Let's get going.
All right, I'm gonna, one last one. I promise I'll be really quick.
No.
It's Dennis Weed. I would really strongly encourage council to step up here and not postpone this, but simply award the bid to the low bidder. I think that's what you really should do, and I think you've heard a lot of testimony to that effect.
What'd you do to your mustache?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Arquez.
we've had a lot of good conversation here, a lot of good points brought up here. What we have here is the documented, presented to us by our engineer that we requested. That's what he's given us. Now, we have Mr. Meisner with his suggestion, and I don't have a problem with that suggestion. The only thing I think we need to look at, if we decide that we want to look at this down the roadway, then it's this council's responsibility to let that engineer and the staff know exactly what we're looking at, so that if we come back, we're not faced with the same situation we have now, which we could, okay? And everybody brought up good points, but that's the one point I want to make. You know, do we resolve it today and get it over with? Do we send it back? And if we send it back, make sure this gentleman and his staff know what we're looking for. So if it comes back, we can't say, well, we didn't know this, we didn't know that. That's my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Mr. Meisner?
Maybe directed at the attorney. Do we have the authority to award this to a contractor aside from who is recommended?
You certainly have the authority to disregard the staff's recommendation in terms of who to award it to. The answer is yes. However, the fact they didn't submit an escrow agreement and instead submitted a protest, as of today, you don't have a complete bid because you do not have the escrow agreement. So if you are inclined not to award it to Kiewit, my recommendation would be to continue the matter, or if the alternative motion is to essentially postpone it until next year, you can certainly do that. But as of this moment, you don't have a complete bid from ANS.
Quick point of clarification.
You
do have an escrow agreement. The agreement is signed. You just do not have the escrow docs.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Do you have escrow docs available and ready?
Okay, hold it. All right, let's just knock it off. Let us talk here, all right? Go ahead.
So, Corey, do we still have the authority to award to a different contractor, given the conditions that you just mentioned?
My recommendation would be to not do that tonight because we have not, the staff has not had the ability to evaluate the escrow documents. So there is not a complete bid that has been submitted for the staff to evaluate.
I have one more
Mr.
question.
Hammond, go ahead.
Legal question, kind of to continue the conversation here, Corey. So if council declined to issue a contract award tonight, is there a basis for the protest?
Is there a basis? I mean, we received it at noon today.
So, but if there is, if we do not award a contract, is there a basis for the protest? In other words, and that might be a question more appropriate for Aerie.
If the question is, does the city should the city respond or determine not to respond, the answer to that is yes. The way the protest process works, the city has 7 working days to respond, and then if there's no response, it's essentially deemed denied. But yes, there is an active protest that was received today at noon that the city has to evaluate.
That will go on no matter what our decision tonight, essentially.
Not necessarily. I mean, certainly if you awarded it to AES, my hunch is the protest would be withdrawn. So I don't want to, I don't know that to be the case.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mr. Gonzalez?
If the escrow docs were provided, can we accept them past the deadline?
The bid documents
can we-
give the authority to address bid irregularities that way if the council determined to do so.
Okay.
Any council members? Mr. Meisner?
All right. So, am I understanding, and maybe Adam can help, or Tony, I don't care, that the basic dollar bid from Kiewit was roughly $5,044,228.60. The bid from ANS was $4,059,000 even. Now, I guess my basic question is, do those 2 bids include the same work?
That's in question, which is the reason we scored the way we did.
Can you expound?
Why is it in question?
In evaluating their proposals, it wasn't clear to us that they included the entire scope of work.
What scope of work did you believe that they did not include?
It wasn't clear whether they included a lot of the water line work, the extra intersection work, and the drainage work.
So, did we include that work in our RFP?
Yes.
So, Corey, if we've included the work in our RFP and they failed to include that work in their proposal, does our RFP take the controlling preference?
Yes, and that was the second basis in the staff memorandum for the recommendation, was that it did not include the entire scope.
And that's the purpose for the escrow documentation, that we would have sealed in a vault right now, proof of whether they included it or not. So now if you allow it to be delivered at a different time, there could be the perception that they have altered those documents before tonight or after tonight.
But the scope of work is being controlled by the original RFP language, is that correct? So, if they failed to provide a price on half of the work, that's their fault. And if we were to award and they're half of the work short, they're obviously not going to make a whole lot of money on the project. Is that not fundamentally correct? I may have confused that. I mean, if they missed work and we award the bid based upon their proposal and they have to do extra work, that's their problem.
I think the difficulty is, and I think the gentleman from the concrete company probably articulated it the best, there's a difference between the design-build contract that this RFP asked for and a design-bid build. And there's a lot of mixing of the concepts in the discussions tonight. And so the design-build documentation and the backup to the escrow agreement is important to evaluate the bid as a whole. And a lot of the discussions about saving the $985,000 is a perfectly appropriate discussion, but it's unclear whether it is apples to apples at this point. It's unclear whether the same scope was bid.
The risk then is claims. So they can come back and make an argument that, no, you didn't really say that that's what kind of culvert you wanted, even though that may have been what we intended. And so we can't go back to their documentation and say, well, you're right, you included this type of culvert when we intended this, so your price is fair. Let's make the claim and take care of that and pay the difference.
I'd read in one portion of the bid where, and I'm just picking that subject, one portion of the bid where it mentioned culverts, that there was the requirement to replace all culverts with the existing size.
Correct.
Is that similar language throughout the contract? I mean, throughout the proposal? I've read this, but I can't remember.
No, that was
all of it.
specific to culvert, and then we actually further in an addendum and further clarification on information, narrowed that scope even further for the culverts. So yeah, that's an example. We would say replace all culverts in kind. If they didn't include that in their bid, and then that was open to interpretation after the project starts, like which culvert, is that really within the scope, is it not, that sort of discussion.
Are those details in the escrow documents?
They should be. The escrow documents are essentially a breakdown of their pricing.
Okay, so by review of an escrow document, you could say whether they did include or did not include
Right.
all of the work in their bid.
The primary purpose of that is for dispute.
Okay.
It's to settle
quickly,
dispute.
John Paul, quickly, make a comment.
I'd like to make a comment. I think it's important. We're kind of dancing around the bush. The escrow documents, we submitted the agreement saying we would submit the escrow documents. The escrow documents can be submitted immediately. They will not be looked at unless there's a dispute. What we're referring to was because we skipped a dotted line on a map. If you look at the Form D, it clearly states the water line that was put in, and the schedule clearly states the items that we're talking about are in the bid. I don't think it's, it's motherhood and apple pie if you look at the Schedule D.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I do, but
Well, the mayor gets to talk last.
maybe.
And the mayor's not happy. When the mayor's not happy, everybody else is damn straight not going to be happy. I'm not going to take this any further. It's not going to go up for a bid. I don't want a motion. We're not going to do a roll call. What we're going to do is sit back and talk about this. There's $1 million here. Somebody made a comment in this letter, which I didn't get a copy of, by the way, which irritates me. Something about being unfair to the people. Well, damn it anyway, if you're going to miss it by almost $1 million, how unfair is that? That's unfair. That's one of your points in here. I don't like design build. I have told you that for almost 2 years. You're taking these contracts and giving them, you're purposely almost making sure big contractors get it. That's inappropriate for Canyon City. Just wait. What irritates me is the assertion that some of these people out here can't do as good a job as a big company. I'm offended by that because they've done a lot of my stuff. Now that irritates me. Not yet. I'm talking. And I would like to have it from council that the city does not get the bids in the future, that we hire a private consulting firm to look at them and evaluate them and then give them to us. That's the fairness that's going to occur. I think this was done appropriately. I didn't like the language in it. I didn't like what was said. And it irritates me. And like I said, when the mayor's mad, everybody's going to be hurt. Now let's cut this out. If we have to break this into smaller things like people like water lines and curb and gutter and stuff like that, so the little people can get this. That's what we should do. Because all these people right here, I don't know if they can take down a $3 million contract. Well, obviously, we've seen that. 2 people. So what we're doing here, we have to rethink. And this idea that we're going to have $9 million, nobody's going to, it's going to be an out-of-town contractor more than likely. Let's knock it off. It's going to have to be done by people in town. I'm not going to vote on it. It's not coming up. We're going to bring it back for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, procedurally, I'm not sure you have the authority to do that. I think it makes more sense.
Really?
I'm just,
You want to test that?
I think it makes more sense for this council to make a decision, yea or nay, on the issue. It's on the agenda. We need to either postpone it by the vote of the council or vote on the matter.
Is that what we have to do?
Take some action so that the folks are here tonight, know when it's coming back if you don't vote up or down. So,
Then I want a motion to decline this. Anybody want to make that?
Well, if I make a motion to approve it, then we can, those that are opposed to it can vote in the A, or the negative.
I don't want to take the chance on that.
Well, can I make a motion to not approve it?
Yes, you have to make a motion. Make that motion.
You certainly can make a motion, and I'm not sure what, not to approve what.
Yeah, but if I make a motion to not approve it, you have to vote in the positive.
I think it makes more sense.
Right?
Not approve what? It would be, is it a motion?
The original suggestion is the,
What's the original suggestion?
Can I ask a simple question? Can we just go ahead and make a motion to delay this, send it back to them, and come back and do it later with all the ifs and ands and positives and negatives we have, so that we can come back, hopefully, with a document that everybody will understand? Because right now, everybody does not understand this. I think that's the simplest solution. It also takes in what you said.
I think it gets confusing. Mayor and council, I move that we approve Design Build Street Improvement Project 2A.
to approve it or
Approve it.
With what contractor?
award it to who?
As it's written.
My staff.
So award to Kiewit. I have a motion to award to Kiewit.
As written.
I'll second.
Any seconds? Any discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to say something. I got involved in council because I've had a lot of experience interacting with the city and with different groups as a small business owner. I see his perspective. I've seen some of the hurdles. I also, on the other hand, have seen some of our staff. So we've got some very capable staff. My goal is not to sit up here to place blame or to put shame on any of our staff or to put blame or shame on any of it. At the end of the day, it's all on our shoulders. The people who spoke here tonight, they had some great ideas. I love the idea of switching away from the RFP and going back to the bidding process. You know, if you do the same thing and you expect different results, there's a name for that. It's called insanity. And the same thing has not worked. I think it's time to reevaluate it. I would like to see this issue, no money be spent, and us to reevaluate our process.
I
Then
concur.
vote no.
Wait. Start your roll call.
Go, call the roll.
Councilmember Meisner.
Nay.
Councilmember Jaquez.
She didn't
Councilmember
get-
Jaquez.
She didn't get that.
Oh, based on what I said earlier, we gave them the document we wanted to give them, they gave it to us, so I would say yes. So what's your answer?
Are you voting to award it to Kiewit?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorito.
Okay, hold on.
Nay.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Nay.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Nay.
Councilmember Smith. Nay. Denied by majority vote.
We're going to take a slight recess to let things cool off a little bit, and then we're going to the Planning Commission vacancy. Reconvening the meeting at 7:50, is it? Item number 7 is filling the vacancy for the Planning Commission. The city clerk will distribute ballots. Do I read this? Okay. The city clerk will distribute ballots, tally, and announce the highest vote getter. The mayor will break any tie vote. Ooh, I get to vote. Maybe. Council will now officially make the appointment. No, wait, we have to vote. Let's vote.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to know how many of our people who have applied are here tonight? Just 3.
I want to go ahead and reiterate what my memo said, that it was my understanding through the city administrator that they did not need to be here tonight, as they weren't going to be interviewed. So a lot of them may have chose not to be here because there was not going to be a requirement. So hopefully that wouldn't.
And however, some did choose to.
Some
be here,
chose to,
regardless. Thank you.
Tony County, your clerk.
Clerk to the clerk, I like that. You can do that.
You like having an assistant, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome, yeah.
Are you going to tally? Who's tallying?
As soon as I get in, I can't.
Okay.
Thank you for being here tonight, by the way, and for your willingness to come back onto Planning Commission. We're really excited about you guys.
6 of them. 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mr. Mayor, do you want to announce that, and then we'll need a motion?
The winning
Highest vote getter.
vote, the highest vote, is Mr. Brandon Smith. Is Mr. Smith here? Thank you. And so I will need a motion and a second to officially appoint Brandon Smith to the Planning Commission for Canyon City.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Brandon Smith to the Planning Commission.
Second.
So okay, second, any discussion on that motion?
Term ending July 1,
Of this year,
Clear vision.
2020.
of 2020. Okay. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Dorito.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Okay, number 8 is a council member appointment to the Planning Commission. Could a report from the city administrator?
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations, Brendan.
Thank you.
Congrats, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.
Do we need a report from the administrator on the appointment for Planning Commission? Or not?
Only that our esteemed council member there is interested and has prior experience. I think he's highly qualified.
Okay, then I will need a motion and a second appointing Mr. John Hamrick to be the appointed member of the Planning Commission, the council member to the Planning Commission. Could I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we appoint John Hamrick to the Planning Commission.
Okay. I will need a second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the motion?
Can he vote against himself?
No. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilmember Dorito.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
I'll probably regret this. Aye.
Good job, John.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you,
for your
Mr.
service.
Hamrick, and you'll enjoy the train ride. Well, we should have put this first, because now we've kept our chief of police here until,
We needed him here.
No, he provided security
Uh-huh.
too, so it worked out good.
thank you for staying. As a discussion of a request for additional appropriation of funds for the police department, could I have a report from the chief of police? Thank you.
Mayor, members of council, I appreciate your time tonight and also your consideration for the proposed memo that's coming forward. The ordinance wasn't submitted tonight and will be coming from finance once the particulars are actually outlined, and Director Patel can talk about that a little bit more. What this money is actually designed to do, the building that was donated by the Bruffy Greenlee Corporation, this will start to outfit that building with some of the necessary items such as furniture and those types of items that we have a very small window that the state government, POST, the Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, is willing to reimburse at 100% those costs up to $50,000. And so rather than miss out on this money, in conversation with City Administrator O'Rourke, we wanted to propose this so that we could actually take advantage of that $50,000 fund from the state. There would be additional requests later, but the fiscal year for POST starts, sorry about that, the fiscal year for POST starts in July, and so larger requests for grant funding from them to help outfit and renovate our building at 1145 Ohio would come at a later point. But because these funds are only available until June 30th, and obviously our bid process needs to be followed, I wanted to put this forward for your consideration to appropriate $50,000 that would be reimbursed at 100%.
Mr. Meisner?
Harry, we got money somewhere?
Yeah, this is a cash flow issue, so we don't have a problem with the cash flow. Eventually, we will receive back this money.
Right,
once
but
it is-
initially, he's gonna sign in blood or something?
Harry said he had it in his desk drawer. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Never.
Loose
Never,
change.
never do that.
Okay. Any comments from council, questions? Good. There's no action then, so.
Just a thumbs right?
Yeah,
Sure. It's okay. It's okay with everybody?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Good, thank you.
I do have a
Thank you,
comment. It doesn't have anything to do with this, but I did have an opportunity to interact with our police department again this weekend.
What did you do this time?
I didn't do anything. The officer did an outstanding job, but he was taking pictures with his personal cell phone because we don't have MTDs in place. So we need to get that done.
We are definitely moving forward on that, Councilman Meisner. We actually are, I'm going to have a meeting with our IT section this week, along with my deputy chief, who's actually managing this project. And our timelines, hopefully by July, we will have that in place. Obviously, we have to wait for the CDOT contract to come back. So that's somewhat ambitious to think of July, but we're going to start thinking the logistics of hardware implementation as well as training so that all the other hurdles are out of the way. And once, obviously, the rest of our paperwork process catches up, we'll be ready to go.
I realize that sounds mundane, but keep in mind that in my particular situation, the supposed or assumed driver of the other vehicle was not available. So those pictures, in terms of documenting what actually happened, were very, very critical. And of course, they're on a personal cell phone, and you assume that they're going to get transferred, that it doesn't run out of memory, and all the other things, so.
Well, and to be clear, we actually do issue officers individual cameras from the police department that are able to take digital images. I'm unsure why he didn't use that camera. Maybe it was broken or unavailable.
Could have been me.
Chief, they're going out to bid and opening those bids on April 17th, right?
That's correct.
Good
Okay,
job.
any other comments from council regarding this?
Well, not regarding this. I just want to know who's going to go on the radio tomorrow morning.
I will be there.
Wednesday, isn't it? Tomorrow?
Wednesday morning. Yeah.
Wednesday
It feels
morning?
like tomorrow. Greg?
What time is it at?
8:30.
Let me look at the
Not
rest of the
sure.
schedule first.
I can certainly be there, but if, I've been there several times, if there's other council members that want to go or think about it, let me know if I need to be
Wait,
there.
what
I'll be
morning?
Wednesday morning.
I can go.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
One closing statement. Considering the discussion tonight, I think it's appropriate and reasonable for this council to take the responsibility to give some very specific direction to staff in terms of how do we want to proceed with the street project and how do we want to proceed with bids so that staff understand what they need to do, whatever that process
And
is. So we
stick by it.
probably need to look at a government meeting, I guess, and just in terms of laying out a process that we want those staff to follow.
Thank you for your time, Mayor and members of
Okay.
council.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
Okay, that's it. Adjourned.